वेदान्तदेशिकयतीन्द्रकटाक्षलब्ध त्रय्यन्तसारमनवद्य गुणम्बुदाग्र्यम् नारायणाद्य यदि दुर्यकृपाभिषिक्तम् श्रीरङ्गनाथयतिशेखरम् आश्रयामः.
Namaskaram all. Today is Ani Magam here in Switzerland. A very, very auspicious day for all of us. All our minds, thoughts, wishes is all there with Srimad Azhagiyasingar in Srirangam. We are physically here. We are trying all means possible on how we can bear this loss of separation physically with Acharyan. And as a consolation, we thought we will share a few words on Acharyan's Vaibhavam, on some aspects of it which had again profound impact in reflecting on how we handled certain situations. Adiyan has got no qualification to even speak about Acharyan. We got so many Mahavidwans who composed so many stotrams and glories of him. But with Yathamati, whatever little Adiyan had grasped from Adiyan's Kalsheva Acharyan to Apin Swami and from Azhagiyasingar with some personal interactions when we had a chance, and from his own words, Adiyan would like to share a few points of my personal experiences which had an impact. This is only a mode of a purification of Adiyan's tongue. On a brief summary on recollecting on the early childhood of Azhagiyasingar, as we celebrate the Sapthathi Utsavam now in 2025, Azhagiyasingar was born in 1955 in the Tamil Varsham of Manmatham at that time on the Ani month Maka Nakshatram, which fell on 23rd of June 1955 in a Sri Gramam called Thillai Valaham in Thiruvarur district. Swami was born in a lineage of great Mahacharyas, Veda Vidwans and Panditas, Strauta, who were very staunch Adhyapakas and Vaidikas, adhering to the traditions of the Sri Vaishnava. Swami's Upanayam happened at the right age, and soon after that Swami started his Veda Adhyayanam in Rig Veda as per the traditions in a Padashala. When Swami was around 10 years old, Swami joined the Shankara Matam in Kumbhakonam to continue his honest Rigveda Adhyapaka studies. Again, this is the point which Azhagiyasingar has shared in one of his previous interviews, which had a lot of impact on me. We talk about the Sanyasis, Dharma, we are all astounded by Swami's practices, Anushtanams and Vairagyams today. And it's easy for us to come and, okay, they're all great yatis and sannyasis, and for them adhering to their anushtanams and the yati dharmam is of no wonder because they are all Mahavidwans and Mahayatis. But Swami in his Purvashram, when he was about 10 years old, not even a teenager at that time, when he joined Shankara Madam in Kumbhakonam, and as per from a family of traditional Sri Vaishnavas, Swami would not be able to partake the food and join the prasadam served in the Shankara Madam there. So at 10 years old, the then Shankaracharya actually instructed Azhagiyasingar in his Purvashramam. He was named Rangarajan there. So this boy Rangarajan was asked, okay, give him a small vessel and a small stove and let him cook his own food. So the 10-year-old boy was there cooking his own food, trying to make what little rice and something which he can make. And then he was only having that simple prasadam on his Swayam Pakam which he made in his own room. There might be so many delicacies which has been offered and prepared in Shankara Madam as prasadam, which all his other friends would have enjoyed. But this 10-year boy, he had that detachment and vairagyam to say, no, I will not consume outside food, and he was consuming only the food which he prepared himself in the room. Today, do I have that kind of an control over my tongue? I can't say so. How many of us would be able to do it at this time? When Aishinger at their levels are doing like that, it is not the question of only the atheist thing. But even from his early childhood, he was really strictly following his Anushtanams. And that kind of an Vairagyam to follow Anushtanam is one which Adiyan is trying to emulate. As we say in Tamil, Vilayum Payir Mulaile Theriyum. We were able to see that emerging bud, filled with his austere qualities and following the footsteps of his elders. Swami in his Padashala went on to master the Rig Vedas, which are supposed to be one of the most complex and the longest of the Vedas. And so the traditional Vedic learning is a kind of a step-by-step process with incremental complexities. They start with mastering each step and then move on to the next complex level of mastering the Veda Padas. So there are the steps like Vakya Pada, Pattam, Krama, Jata, Mala, Shika, Rekha, Dvaja, Dhanta, Ratha, and then they become study the Ghana Padam of that particular Vedam, and qualifying on that one is in the title Ghanapadi. So for those who have been following the Vedic schools, achieving the status of a Ghanapadi is supposed to be one of the highest forms of achievement and people there. But our Swami did not stop being Ghanapadi. He went on further to master certain deeper nuances on the Ghana there, including the various Lakshanas of Ghanam, to having the title Salakshana Ganapadi, which is very rare, and today there are only a very handful of Sri Vaishnavas who have this title of Salakshana Ganapadi, who master the Ganam with all the Lakshanams there in it. So that's when more of his thirst of his knowledge of mastering the subject. Along with the Vedic studies, Swami also had his Grantha Chatushtaya Kalakshepams. Swami is in his Purvashram is Samashrayam and Bharanyasam. Everything happened in the Tirupati of Srimad Mukkur Azhagiyasingar, the 44th Patadipati of Sri Agovilamadam. Swami entered the Grahasthashramam in the year 1988, and he was blessed with 3 daughters and a son in his married life. Again, a point here which I wondered and amazed is that for all of us Brahmanas, we have our Nitya karma, Naimitya karma, and Kami karma. And mostly when we say with the Nitya karma, if we are able to perform the Sandhya Madhanam Trikalam, again self-introspection of how many of us are able to do a Trikala Sandhya Madhanam and do Parma Thiruvaradhanam, maybe a little Brahma Yajnam, and we feel complete and satisfied that we perform the Nitya karmas. But for a married person, there is a lot of other procedures which are steps to be followed. One of them is the Agnihotram. Agnihotram is with a Vedic and Homam ritual which is performed both in the morning and evening along with their wife. So both the morning and evening, husband and wife cooperates together and perform the yajna together. So Swami and his Dharmapatni were in such an anyonya dhamvadyam, and they were able to perform the Agnihotram morning and evening without fail, 365 days every year. Right from the time of his marriage until the day Swami entered the Sanyasa ashramam, Swami was a Nitya Agnihotri. Today probably we can count in our fingers, as what my Acharya used to say, on how many Nitya Agnihotris are there with us. But Azhagiyasingar in his Purvashram was a Nitya Agnihotri. In fact, it is perhaps on the Vedic world, they said could be even be a loss that we have lost one Nitya Agnihotri when he took the Sanyasa ashramam, but it is for a much higher cost to grace us all. So Malolan, he really knows whom to select to be there adorning his Peetam to perform his Kainkaryam there. And Azhagiyasingar, Vilivalam Azhagiyasingar, when he selected him, and then said probably in the history of Sri Madam, our Azhagiyasingar is the first Nitya Agnihotri in all the 700 years of history of the Sri Madam to be adorning the Asthanam of Malola Kainkaryam. Swami's Vairagyam is to be very specifically noted. So Vairagyam, we thought we mentioned about his Vairagya when he was a child in his Gurukulam Padashala itself. But not only that, even on all aspects when it comes to some major monetary benefits and stuff like that, Swami had his very staunch detachment to strictly adhering to his anushtanams without looking at the material benefits of what if I ignore. So one example which Ayashinger himself has shared in one of his earlier interviews is that it says that once when he was in his peak in his career, he was invited for a Vedic conference, a Sammelanam, a Sadas in Ujjain. So there it was a kind of an all India level meet of Veda Vidwans and Sadas, and only two Ganapadis from Tamil Nadu were invited to join that conference, one among which was our Ayashinger. So when they were all looking at planning for the travel, Ayashinger noted that when he will be traveling to Ujjain, then that was a conflict with the monthly Masaparapu Tarpanam which was supposed to be performed. So Swami said, no, that Anushtanam is much more important, so he will not be able to travel on that day. Swami decided to forego the participation in the conference, stayed at home, continued his Anushtanam there, and then went on with his life. But then he noted that, yes, even though he did not participate in the sadhas, Dharmo Rakshati Rakshitaha, the Veda Mata never forgets her children. So there in the Ujjain committee, people knowing about Swami's Anushtanam and his Vidvat Tejas, they had sent to Swami in his doorstep all the Bhagavanams he would have received by participating there in person with his certificate, shawls, dresses, and also a very hefty Sambhavana of 10,000 rupees, Swami mentioned, which is very, very high for those days. So there it says that irrespective of an expectation of result, when you just follow Anushtanam. Ayashinger is also quoted on how when there were his thoughts and contemplations on what he should do or not do, he was able to overcome everything, whether it was good or bad, which we are not sure, by just following the words of elders. Again, that's something which had a very strong impact on me. If I know I want to do something in my mind, I have a very strong desire. Okay, but then I'm not sure if I go and ask my Guru, Acharya and my parents, will they say yes or no? And what if they say no? Will I still able to continue doing it or not? All of us go through this kind of a dilemma to say what is the right decision. But Ayashinger in his life's examples, he showed that just when you follow the words of your Guru, follow the words of the elders there, when advice is given to you specifically, fools are those who do not listen to the advice given to them. Swami is there in this state today by completely surrendering when we're following the footsteps of elders and just by listening to what the elders have given to him. So that is the state which we all aspire, or Adiyan personally aspires to achieve there. Reflecting on the Vairagyam of Ayashinger, we can also even relate to it with the situation of how Ayashinger accepted the Sanyasam from his Krigasasrama days. It says almost in the year of 2008, when the 45th Pattam Ayashinger was not keeping good health and he wanted to appoint a successor for the ashramam to take care of the devotees' well-wishers and Malo and Nitya Aradhanam. There are so many thoughts and contemplations which they all had. But Ayashinger quoted that one day when Rangarajan Swami was summoned to the ashramam for a particular event, when Ayashinger entered the ashramam itself, there was a very strong thought and vibration to Swami that this is the person who would be there adoring the next Saint Peter. And when Vaibhavam Ayashinger asked Rangarajan Swami if it's Malaran's name that he would be taking up the Peetam next after him, Swami was in his peak of his married life. He was probably married for 20 years, 21 years at that time. He had 3 daughters, all of them are waiting to be married in due course. Swami's son was hardly 8 years or 9 years old at that time. With all that factors heavy on one side, as we mentioned earlier, said, what is the advice of the elders given to me? What is the Acharyan's Nemanam? He says, if this is Acharyan's Nemanam, if this is what Malal and Tirullam is, I will agree, I will accept. He gave up, he had a complete detachment to everything else, the consequences of it, because he had complete faith and surrender to his Acharyan's Thiruvullam, complete faith and surrender to Perumal. And says, if Perumal and Acharyan wants this to happen, it will happen. So when it is not the 40th Azhagiyasingar who chose to succeed him, it is Malaran who, he gave up the call, and Swami completely left up everything and then took up the Sanyasashrama Pida. And fortunately, by blessings of Perumal, Periyashingar also recovered himself, and together they were there in the Sanyasa Pidam as Periyashingar, Chinnayashingar for a few years until 2013, when finally Periyashingar attained Paramapadam, and our Ayashingar took over the Pattabhishekam and continuing to reign the Simhasanam of Malolar Ayashingars. Swami's Vatsalyam is something which has been very, very profoundly noted by all devotees and Sishyas, including me. We have had several occasions, interactions where we can see Swami's Vatsalyam and affectionately inquiring with each one of us, and understanding what is happening in our lives, like Karakshepam that's been going on, blessing us abundantly. Swami's Matru Vatsalyam to everyone, right from a small boy who's coming in, a small child who is there trying to crawl into Ayashingar, to the cows of Srimadam who've been giving Paranyasam by Ayashingar, to so on. There are so many examples and anecdotes which Kalashepa Acharya and Apin Swami used to share time and now. We have seen a lot of pictures and posts coming up in the various channels, thanks to social media today, that we are all Sishyas all around the world are kind of still being united to understand the happenings in Srimadam every day. Against personal experience in that, there's actually one incident I would like to quote from this year. Again, at this bhagyam of attending, as an attendee to one of the Malola Vidvat Sadas, we had towards Ayashingar Sapthathi Utsavam one Sadas every month happening on different subjects. So earlier this year when Adherence was there in India, Apin Swami very gracefully also took me to the Sadas, introduced me to Ayashingar, and then there's a very first time live experience Adherence was experiencing such Mahavidwans assembled on the stage, and all the earnest seekers of Shastram and learners giving their Vakyartham. There's one Swami, when he was making his presentation on a particular topic, and thankfully with Ayashingar this time Sadas, he said it will not only be for the advanced learners of the subject in a more complex way, but it has to be in a very easily understandable form for all the commoners to understand. So almost most of the Swamis, they had PowerPoint presentations projected there, trying to explain all the audience and what is happening, and the language was really toned down in an understandable way for us. So this Swami's presentation was also there, and there were some mistakes in his slide, typing mistakes on it, but when he was giving his Vakyartham, he was explaining. So the other Vidwans who were there as Pariksha Adhikaris, they were pointing out, okay, this is maybe wrong, and Swami said, no, it's a typo, and then he went on corrected in his speech explaining the particular concept. About 2 or 3 mistakes happened, and in fact he also pointed, he prepared the slides in a hurry when coming by train to the Sadas and so on. Ayashingar, when the third mistake happened, he kind of pointed out to the Pariksha Adhikaris there who were trying to correct and explain. He says, why are you trying to find out more mistakes on it there? What he's explaining is correct. So let it go on with it. So don't go and point out the mistakes. He did not want that person to even feel bad about what if his mistakes are being pointed out in public, in audience there. He says, as long as they have this understanding on it. They didn't want, Ayashingar did not want that 1 second of kind of a lower confidence to the person who is speaking, and then immediately said, no, it's okay. And then immediately the next error came in. They said, okay, Ayashingar has already asked us to ignore everything there, so you please continue with the flow without any further interruptions. The rest of the session went on. And again, sitting in the audience was so amazing. He said, when there's something, when we others come in to us and they make mistakes, the first thing what we want to do is point back the mistakes. He said, then also to show that, okay, I know what I'm right and you're wrong, and so on. But Ayashingar showed us by example, it is not important to not to point out their mistakes, but it's also important for them to not to have their lower confidence level, to encourage their interest, encourage their participation, and encourage them to be, taking those lessons in for the rest of their lives to how they could perfect themselves in future. So that was something which affected Adhiyan a lot, and trying to emulate Ayashingar in this way as not to point others on their mistakes there. To conclude, I will say that it's the duty of me personally and for all sisters of us. Adhiyan's aim is to at least a fraction of the qualities of life which Ayashingar and our Acharya simulated. If Adhiyan can follow it in my life, it will be considered a very, very big achievement. We all sincerely pray to Lakshmi Narasimhan, Maloran, and all Purvacharyas to bestow our Aishingar with very healthy life, very strong physical body. So he will be able to continuing performing Malola Kankaryam, Bhagavata Kankaryams there, and continue to bless us, guide us, correct us in our paths for many more years, decades to come. We're all celebrating Aishingar's Sapthathi. We also would be in a state where we should be celebrating Aishingar's Sathabhishekam in 10 years down the line, Aishingar's Navati, and Aishingar's Satamana Utsavam in the next 30 years down the line. With that blessing to be conferred on Aishingar by Maloran, we sincerely pray that we all should also be there to benefit and to participate in the events and go on under Aishingar's Divya Tiruvadi. Srimate Sri Vancharagopa Shri Ranganatha Yathindra Mahadeshikaya Namaha.